Hi, today I am presenting on the Mastery Learning and Direct Instruction that was created by Dr. Madeline Hunter. Just an introduction, a self-introduction. My name is Madeline Naquin, and I am a graduate student here at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. I have been teaching for about 10 years now at the same school. I currently teach special education. And I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and a master's degree in special education, curriculum, and instruction from Liberty University. So the theory that I'm presenting on today is Dr. Madeline Hunter's model of mastery learning. And not only because her name is the same as mine, but also because her theory is being practiced in classrooms today, at least partially. And there is research that shows that her model is effective in gaining mastery of academic skills. So some background knowledge. Dr. Madeline Hunter was born in 1916 and she died in 1994. She was a professor of educational administration and teacher education. She developed the instructional theory into practice, which is ITIP, as a model that was used primarily in the 1970s, 1980s. And today her method is known as the Madeline Hunter method, and it is comprised of 7 steps. So today we're going to go over what those steps are, and you're probably going to recognize many of these steps as you use them in your classroom and your lesson planning today. So Dr. Madeline Hunter's research determined that certain elements in a lesson maximized learning, no matter the setting or situation of students and teachers. So basic terms that she includes are anticipatory set, objective and purpose, input, modeling, checking for understanding, guided practice, independent practice, and closure. These are all things that I'm sure you have heard and maybe even use in your lesson planning templates and classrooms today. This is just an image that I wanted to share with you that kind of maps out Madeline Hunter's lesson plan template. I do want to make it known that her steps were not created to be used as a formula that is rigid. It's mainly just a guide. So not all lessons are going to use every single element in her template, but they are suggestions and they keep teachers on track with their lesson planning and teaching. So terms define, we're going to go through each of her terms and define them really quick. Anticipatory set is a short activity that helps the students focus their thoughts onto what will be learned. And this is your chance to get them interested in the lesson. So for anticipatory set, I would suggest using videos, music, pictures, ask your students questions, maybe do a quick write before your lesson begins to activate maybe some prior knowledge. This is what your anticipatory set should include. And then you move into your objective and your purpose. The purpose is your why of the lesson. Okay, and the objective tells the student the outcome that they are being expected to master. So what will the students do? What will the students do the activity with? How well are the students expected to know or complete the activity? So the purpose and objectives help students learn more effectively, and they also help teach more effectively, because when we think with the end in mind, it's easier to plan our lessons and teach our lessons with the end goal. This is just an example, an image of ways that you can include the anticipatory set in your lesson planning and classroom. There are multiple ways, as I mentioned earlier. Some of them are to activate prior knowledge. Some of them might be displaying artwork, storytelling, a video. So this is where you get to be creative in introducing a lesson or topic. Input. So input includes the vocabulary or the skills and concepts that the students need to know during the lesson. This is where you can include some discovery, discussion, reading, listening, observing, and modeling is so important. Modeling, I think, is probably one of the most important things, especially for us as special education teachers. Our students need us to model how to do the assignments many, many, many times. So modeling allows the student to see the expectation, demonstrate in a concrete way what the end result should look like. And a simple example that I added to my slide is if you are a kindergarten student, if you have your kindergarten students doing a craft of some sort, do the craft with them step by step. And then also on your board or displayed, you should have a completed craft for them to refer to. That's an example of modeling. So, moving on, checking for understanding. We always want to make sure that our students understand what they are learning throughout the lesson. You should be asking questions, even when you're reading a story. If you're doing a read aloud, ask a question every couple of pages about what's going on so far. You need to keep them actively engaged in your lesson through questioning. Be sure that the student understands the information or the lesson content. Guided practice includes leading the student through a guided practice problem or activity. Use the he or see do approach here, and you should have a lot of direct teacher supervision at this place. So at this point in the lesson, I would say if you know that you have a group of students, like for me, if I'm co-teaching with a general education teacher, this is where I would pull my special education students or even students that didn't master certain skills in the previous lesson. I would pull them to a table and do guided practice with them. But guided practice may look different in everyone's classroom. Independent practice. Once you are sure that your students understand new material, you should assign some independent practice. So we see this a lot in our iReady Math curriculum. I know a lot of people use iReady Math in their schools, and I do. So I use this as an example. In iReady Math, you go through the workbook pages during the lesson, and there are pages that are like color coded, guided practice, and independent practice. Independent practice pages are pages that students should be doing on their own. But I say that loosely because I feel that students, yes, they need to try it on their own, but we also, as teachers, need to be circulating and making sure that the students are understanding what they're doing and they're not struggling to do the independent practice on their own. And then closure in your lesson is super important. This is where you are going to review or wrap up your lesson. This is a good place to administer a simple exit ticket. You need to be checking for understanding at the end of your lesson as well as during your lesson. Don't wait until the end of your lesson to check for understanding, because if you haven't done that before independent practice, then the student isn't able to do the independent practice. Use this final informal assessment to gather data about who needs to be pulled for intervention during intervention time, what skills do they need to work on, and who will be in that group. That's what I use my exit tickets for during closure. And so with that, because I referenced iReady Math, I used an example of what an exit ticket might look like, and I pulled this from Google. It was a simple Google search, and it is from Lucky Little Learners, and I have that cited in my references. Classroom instruction implications. So in order to apply this approach to classroom instruction, teachers need to take some time to lesson plan. This means that you should be going over your content thoroughly and using a template of some sort. I provided everyone with a template that you can download. It is in PDF format, and I do have permission to use this PDF for multiple people. So if you would like to look at it, you can. Lesson planning facilitates effective teaching and mastery learning. So if you are not lesson planning, then you probably don't really have a good concrete example of what you should be doing throughout the day. It also helps if you have an emergency, if your lesson plans are done, your sub has something to do or a direction to follow. So there are different lesson planning templates that mirror Dr. Hunter's method, just like this one. Make sure that in your classroom, when you are lesson planning, you go ahead and make sure that your objectives are displayed. Not only for your students, because, my first graders probably can't read the objective in print. However, for me or for my colleagues who walk into the room to see what the outcome of the lesson is supposed to be, it kind of serves as a reminder. And then have a plan for closure and quick assessment at the end of the lesson. Not adding a closure or an exit ticket to a lesson can result in a missed opportunity for learning. Examples of accommodation. So teachers might use exit tickets to determine which students need direct instruction or small group instruction. These students may have IEPs and need some accommodations in place to master the skill that is being taught or assessed. Make sure that the student is not failing at the skill because of a missed opportunity or because you failed to accommodate them per their IEP. The student may require a buddy, a calculator, headphones, to have the material read to them, especially if they're reading a story or a book. There's probably a way that you can have that read to them, or you physically, in person, read it to them. A student may also require assignments to be modified beforehand. This is where planning and lesson planning comes in. That's why it's so important. We have to think about these students before our lessons begin because sometimes modifying work can be very time consuming. Using the steps that are outlined for you is best practice because this allows you to think about mapping out different ways to relay materials to students in a way that they may understand. Remember that all learners are not the same. All right, so we're going to have some hands-on participation. I'm going to give my audience a lesson planning template, and you're going to work with a shoulder partner to look at the lesson planning template. Together, you're going to come up with an objective, and then I want you to brainstorm what your anticipatory set and closure might look like. That's the only thing that I want you to work on because we're limited on time. So I want you to fill out just those two sections of the template, and I'm going to set a timer. When the timer is up, we will share our examples. And then in closing, we are going to discuss some obvious advantages and disadvantages to Dr. Hunter's approach. Okay, time's up. Let's go over some advantages and disadvantages. So some people may think that advantages of this are that this is great for lessons that require structure and repetitious learning. And it's great for assessment of teachers and students. So a lot of times when admin come in to do teacher evaluations, they are looking for specific parts of your lesson, and they are grading you according to what they see is being done. So using a template such as this one is a great way to make sure that you have checked all the boxes before your teacher evaluations or observations. Some disadvantages are that maybe these lessons aren't quite as open-ended as we would like them to be, especially in maybe a science class or classes that need to be more hands-on. So they don't leave a whole lot of room for exploratory learning, but I kind of feel like that's not completely true because you can add exploratory learning in your closure even, or do a little bit more hands-on work after the lesson is completed. So those are just some advantages and disadvantages that I picked up on when I was reading about Dr. Madeline's model. Okay, so this is the references that I used today, and I'm glad that you could join me.